Business development podcast leaders, Hypervac Technologies has long been a sponsor of the show, but they are now breaking new ground with Hyperfab, a division set to revolutionize metal fabrication. Rooted in family-run service, Hypervac now introduces fiber laser cutting machines, reshaping the game in metal fabrication. Hyperfab's fiber laser cutters offer precision beyond compare, meeting modern standards flawlessly. Speed up your projects with remarkable efficiency, reducing production time and boosting productivity. Versatility is key, handling diverse materials and thickness for endless possibilities. In the competitive landscape, cost-effectiveness is paramount. Hyperfab's fiber laser cutters optimize resources, minimizing waste and energy consumption for sustainable, cost-efficient process. Safety takes the spotlight too, with advanced features ensuring a secure work environment. As leaders in duct cleaning equipment, Hypervac Technologies extends its commitment to excellence. Explore Hyperfab's cutting-edge technology at www.hypervac.com/Hyperfab. Elevate your metal fabrication with precision and innovation from Hyperfab. Thanks for listening to a word from our sponsor. Let's get back to the show. Welcome to episode 114 of the Business Development Podcast. And on today's expert guest interview, we are bringing to you Patrick Gaskin, founder and CEO of Cardly, a greeting card company that is disrupting the entire industry. Stay tuned. You are not going to want to miss this episode.
The great Mark Cuban once said, "Business happens over years and years. Value is measured in the total upside of a business relationship, not by how much you squeezed out in any one deal." And we couldn't agree more. This is the Business Development Podcast, based in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and broadcasting to the world. You'll get expert business development advice, tips and experiences, and you'll hear interviews with business owners, CEOs, and business development reps. You'll get actionable advice on how to grow business. Brought to you by Capital Business Development, capitalbd.ca. Let's do it. Welcome to the Business Development Podcast. And now your expert host, Kelly Kennedy.
Hello, welcome to episode 114 of the Business Development Podcast. And today we have an absolutely amazing expert guest for you. Today we are graced with the visionary Patrick Gaskin, visionary founder and CEO of Cardly. He is at the forefront of revolutionizing personalized communication. Under Patrick's leadership, Cardly has pioneered a cutting-edge technology that seamlessly merges the digital and the physical realms, allowing businesses to effortlessly generate and mail personalized handwritten messages with the authenticity of real human handwriting. With a passion for innovation and a keen understanding of the power of personalization, Patrick has steered Cardly towards becoming a global force in the technology sector. His brainchild, Cardly, boasts the proprietary algorithmic solution that transforms text input, imperfections, and all into virtually indistinguishable replica of genuine handwriting. This groundbreaking technology empowers businesses to send customized handwritten messages, whether in single or bulk quantities, in mere minutes. Patrick's strategic vision has expanded Cardly's footprint across multiple continents, with operational hubs in Toronto, the UK, USA, and Australia. Notably, Cardly's reach extends to over 50 different countries, demonstrating the company's commitment to providing a seamless and international personalized mail solution. As a trailblazer in the tech industry, Patrick Gaskin's leadership has not only positioned Cardly as a frontrunner in the personalized communication space, but has also redefined the way that businesses connect with their audiences worldwide. His commitment to innovation and excellence continues to propel Cardly to new heights, making it a go-to platform for businesses seeking an unparalleled and effortless approach to personalized communication. Patrick, it's an absolute honor to have you on the show today.
Oh, Kelly, the honor is all mine after that amazing introduction. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's awesome. It's awesome. We actually met through what is a mutual friend for me and you, and a client of yours, Rodney Lover, at Work Office Furniture. he sent me a card from Cardly, actually, at Christmas time and said, Kelly, you have to meet Patrick. What they are doing here is super awesome and unbelievable. And he would be a perfect guest for your show. And after I did a little bit of research, I'm like, yes, introduce me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, we love hearing those stories of people of sending things out and getting that amazing feedback. So yeah, that's great.
Your cards are beautiful. They're very, very well done. And I want to get into that story. But first, tell us, who is Patrick Gaskin? How did you end up on this entrepreneurial journey?
Oh, I mean, like all entrepreneurs, it started young. I mean, I've been told that I was trying to sell stuff to the kids in the street when I was 6 or 7. So, I've always had that sort of drive to try and do things. And I also was heavily influenced by my own family's business. So my father was pretty entrepreneurial, built a business from one store into 50 stores around Australia, hence the accent, and went on that journey with him a bit as well. So, it's very exciting to build things, and, it's nice for the ego to sort of build something that you can look back and be proud on. So, yeah, it's been there from a really young age, and something that I kind of can't separate myself from. Even if I go I'm between roles or I'm on holidays, like I invariably, have to go and get a book or something or a notepad to start writing ideas into, because that's just my wiring. So yeah, I'm one of those serial / tragic entrepreneurs that can't not be.
I was going to say, I kind of feel like once you become an entrepreneur, it's like impossible. It's like part of your blood at that point. It's pretty hard to remove
Yeah,
it.
I don't know why we're like the way we are, but yeah, once you've decided that that's a thing that you enjoy, it's very hard to give it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about your father's business.
So you don't have them in North America, but they're called news agencies. It's kind of like a drugstore combined with a stationery business, basically selling, why it's called news agencies. It sold publications, so newspapers, magazines, in combination with greeting cards, stationery, lotteries. So, kind of a bunch of different segments that might be separate stores in the US and Canada, but in Australia and the UK, they're just sort of all combined into one store called a news agency. And they that's where he started. And, he started in the 70s. And back then they were a very strong business, a cornerstone of the community. People were still reading newspapers back then. Yeah. Magazines were important. That's how we got our information. It was pre-internet. So they were very, very solid businesses. And yeah, he started just working in one, and then managed to work hard enough to get into a partnership into one, and then left Victoria, which is a southern state of Queensland, southern state of Australia, moved to Queensland up in the north, and again in a partnership bought one, and then took over that one by himself in a pretty regional area, and then eventually moved to the capital city of Queensland, Brisbane, and started putting multiple stores on the ground. And I think I worked in the stores from pretty much as young as I can remember, but actually actively working and getting paid probably an unfair wage at sort of 12 maybe. So school holidays, I mean, we did little paper runs and stuff like that before that, but sort of became a bit more serious at sort of 12. And then all through sort of high school, sort of helped around a bit, although my education was pretty important to them. So I sort of focused mostly on that for a bit. But as soon as I had finished my high schooling and when I went to university, I basically worked full time in the business while also studying full time at uni, and yeah, sort of went on that journey from, I think we were at about 5 or 6 stores, so I became general operations manager and pretty important part of the growth story that took us from being a couple of $1 million business to $150 million turnover business.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Mm.
Congratulations. That's
No,
such,
thank you. I mean,
that's
look, at the time though, you don't realize that because, it's obviously a family business. You don't know if you're half decent at what you're doing because,
sure.
the risk of nepotism was high.
Yeah.
Did he have a choice of having me as his right hand man, or was it because I was actually competent? So that was always my concern. So at some point I went, well, I better go and find out if I'm any good. So I did. When we managed to get the business to a certain size where we had some interest from a bigger retailer to come and acquire the business, I took the opportunity to go, okay, well, that's my time to leave. It was also, we were getting to, what was that, 2009 or so. So the iPhone had been around for a couple of years then.
Yeah.
I knew, like, I remember very clearly the day that Steve Jobs stood on stage, even just to announce the iPhone. I went, okay, this vertical is going to be challenged. The idle time that there was no smartphone really. I mean, if you had a BlackBerry, great, but most
Hmm.
people didn't have a very compelling device in their pocket. They were still buying newspapers, magazines. Like, that was an important part of the business. It brought in a lot of traffic, and as soon as I saw that was going to be challenged, I went, okay, well, we need to be starting to think differently. So, um, yeah, I saw an opportunity to go and do something else, and I was going to go overseas or do something completely different. But this company that acquired us said, "Oh, no, you come and work for us." So I moved from Queensland down to Victoria and moved to Melbourne, and took on a sort of a senior leadership team role there in business development, and was charged with helping that business transition to the digital transformation of moving to ebooks and running their e-com sites and things like that. So, which was awesome opportunity. It took me to Canada, took me to a partnership with Indigo Books in Canada,
Cool.
investing in the early days of Kobo, which has been a great technology success out of Canada.
Yep.
So really, really interesting. But of course, it was all very entrepreneurial. Even in a large retail business, I was given a bit of freedom to go and think a little bit creatively and around the edges, which I loved. I quite enjoyed it. And yeah, got to do some pretty cool stuff in a short amount of time. And yeah.
My gosh, like what an unbelievable journey that you've had, even from a young age.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah. Like I do look back on it now, and I go, "Wow, I've done a few things." Like,
yeah,
um, even just that trip to Canada. I think I'd only been with the company for a couple of months. So from me going from Brisbane, which is pretty much a big country town. There's over 1 million people, but it's it still feels a little bit regional. To
yeah,
all of a sudden flying across the world to cut a deal on a technology play that was pretty transformative at the time. I was like, okay, how did I get here? So there was a bit
yeah,
of imposter syndrome going on, but
yeah,
no, it was fun, and then the journey kept going from there. Once I was in that role, not too long, Samsung came knocking and said, "Hey, look, we've had some dealings with you, and we want to get you to come and do similar things for us and work in our sort of transformation." That was the point that they'd only had the first Galaxy phone out, so
wow,
it was Galaxy One, and they were bringing Galaxy Two to market. And they're like, content's huge. We need to focus on digital content. Help us with e-learning and ebooks, and that was the original thing because they didn't understand that space, and I did.
yeah,
So I was one of only maybe a couple of people that really even understood that vertical at all in Australia. So they were like, "Yep, let's get you in." And then I started work on music streaming and smart TV content and
wow,
working with national broadcasters. Yeah, so it was very quick uh, role shift, for working in a family business, which was was scaled,
yeah,
but all of a sudden getting to do some really cool stuff in tech, which had been a bit of a passion for mine from early doors. Like one of the things you learn, I think, in retail in particular, is that you can only be as good as your weakest link when it's a very people dependent organization. So wherever we could, I saw that, well, technology can help sort of mitigate against that, sort of shortcoming of businesses that are too people reliant. So I became quite passionate about, okay, well, let's look at the internet and, building transactional websites and these types of things, and testing and learning how you go from traditional business models to disruptive business models that are using technology at their heart. So that got me, on the journey that I've kind of still on at the moment, where I'm trying to disrupt sort of more traditional ways of working with, by embracing technology. Yeah.
The thing that I find really interesting about it is your business development background, that you're really coming at this whole thing still from the standpoint of relationships are key. How do we build relationships, but still allow technology to help us do it better?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I mean, that is absolutely the thing with Cardly. Like when I got to the point of saying it, and I knew I needed to do something in this space. It was kind of before startups were really a well-established path. Certainly in Australia, I think Australia was a bit slow to move into this space. And I went, oh, well, I know I need to do something in this space. And my first thing, because I'd been to these multiple companies and helped them with digital transformation, was to go, well, I'll start an agency and I'll help them do digital transformation. But what I really wanted to do, and I didn't realize it at the time, was I wanted to be part of digital transformation and doing it myself. But when I got to that point and went, oh, okay, this is actually what I want to do, I then sat down and went, well, what do I know? What do I understand? What am I passionate about? And I do remember being very clear that when I worked at a company like Samsung, which was, very impressive company, but very massive, very scaled, and really they were still in the mindset of just shifting boxes. So, version 1 followed version 2, version 3, so it was smartphone, Galaxy 1, Galaxy 2, here comes Galaxy 3. It was very cyclical, and ultimately they weren't big on like maintaining relationships. Like they were quite happy to just say, just come and buy the next one. And that was very much the culture of smartphones in those early years. It was always like, okay, get the next model every year.
Yeah.
So they didn't care too much about the relationship. I found that quite jarring, because it's like, if you build a relationship with a customer, I learned that from retail. Like if you build a loyal customer, probably got them for life. So that there's value in building relationships. So when I got to this point where it's like, well, what do I want to do? I thought about what I knew. So as I said, my family's business had sold greeting cards, so I understood that space. And I also knew that I didn't want to just sell technology for the sake of it. I wanted it to add value, and I wanted to be like, well, idealistic perhaps, but I wanted it to be something that sort of made a positive difference in the world. So where I landed was, well, actually, and it's really that mindset shift from working at somewhere like Samsung, where you're selling technology and the new technology product, which people probably didn't need, to go into selling something that people did really need. And that's where I came back to relationships and personalization of messages and content, and how to deliver that in a meaningful way. Because it's a product, yes, people pay for it, but what we're really selling is connection. We're selling the ability for people to talk to each other, often in ways that they're not even comfortable doing face to face. So, and that's something I learned in the early stages, that with greeting cards, people buy greeting cards almost as there's a social contract there, that there's an expectation, but they're also an excuse for people to be quite vulnerable and say things written down that they wouldn't necessarily say face to face. So we started very much in the consumer mindset, which is more that, right? So obviously it's a bit different in the business perspective, but in the consumer space, if you're sending a card to a loved one, you might say things like, I love you, but you might not be comfortable saying that out loud. So you might write it, but you mightn't say it. So I quite like that fact that we would be selling a product, yes, hopefully making money, great, but also actually contributing in a meaningful way to helping people connect and stay connected, especially in a fast-moving world where we're all sort of getting inundated with so much noise, that it's, and it was a more traditional business model that sort of is a bit slower paced, but important. And so that's when I got to that junction. That's why I kind of landed more. Well, I landed where we are in the decision process, because I like those things about the product, and I've continued to like that. Like we do get, you've given me some amazing feedback today even, but we get some just really delightful commentary from customers saying, you've allowed, particularly during COVID and these types of instances, but often people are dealing with those things on a daily basis where they can't be with their friends and family, and that they're still being able to connect using our technology to enable that, and that's really cool.
It's all about the feeling, right? And it's so funny because we live in a time where I do feel like the emphasis on cards and the importance of them is starting to wane a little bit. And I think that you're on the right path here by saying, well, hold on. Cards ain't done yet. There's just a better way to do them. Because, growing up, my family was heavy on cards, right? We got birthday cards, we got Christmas cards. Like, cards was a big deal. You didn't get a present maybe, but you definitely got a card. Like, it was absolutely critical. And yet I've seen the other side of it with my fiance's family where it's like they rarely give cards. And I'm like, no, you got to give cards. It's important. And we've given cards to all of our clients throughout the years at Capital. And it's been critical. I think that there's this feeling like, do we really have to do that? And my answer is, why wouldn't you? Right? The reality is, why wouldn't you take, 5 minutes out of your day to thank a client, a customer for the amazing relationship and the opportunities that you've had with them over the year with a simple card? And it creates feeling. It's not like when you read a card, it's not just like, oh, that's another card. You genuinely feel good about writing that card and receiving that card. And so I do think it's important. And, it's like I said, it would take a BD guy, I think, to really recognize that importance and say, you know what, we can do this better.
Yeah. Well, that is the thing that occurred to us very early on, right? So, absolutely, yes, it's about that. In the consumer context, it's about these very close interpersonal relationships. But you're right, it absolutely touches on something not primitive, but we've been doing it for 100 years, greeting cards. We've been doing these personalized mail letters. So good, we do letters and note cards and other things as well. But the personalized, going to the effort of putting pen to paper and writing and saying something to someone has amazing cut through, because it just taps into, as you say, that sentiment of it. And it's like, oh, someone cares. I always look at the juxtaposition or the contrast with e-cards. People got really big into e-cards and they just don't mean a lot because they're digital. There's no tactile thing going on. There's not the surprise and delight of, oh, someone sent me some mail, because now that's actually pretty rare to have a piece of physical mail turn up. And all of that plays so well in the BD space, because you're now talking about tapping into all of that stuff that people aren't getting. So as we steer more into digital, a physical product has actually more impact than ever before. So, we see basically 100% open rates with a product that started life as a digital product, gets 100% open rates and conversion rates that are usually 10 to 15 times more effective than email. And that's really powerful from a business perspective. The one thing I always try and balance out, though, with people that really go, wow, well, I just want to use this to like cold call and do like just generate, is that don't forget that there's a bit of a social contract here too, right? So if you're leveraging the power of that amazing engagement, you've got to be genuine. Like try and avoid going straight for the hard sell. And I think good BD people sort of get this, is it's about the relationship. It's about understanding the other person's perspective, making it very contextual about them, and then explaining how you solve their problem. Not going the other way, like, hey, have I got a deal for you? Me. And by the way, you can, this might help you. It's got to be you, and a little bit about me. And this does that very, very well. You're going to get their guard down, right? Because they go, our cards turn up in a craft envelope, the real stamp on it, handwriting on the front. They're going to get opened. So you've got this great opportunity to have a real piece, real moment of engagement. And we see the contrast, people that go and think about that and like put themselves into the position of the person receiving it and keep it pretty genuine and authentic. Outstanding results. Like amazing. Those that go, wow, I'm just going to use this like any other, blast, type tool, not so much, because they're not thinking about the context of how it plays in the market. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing that, and the B2B side for us is obviously, it now is bigger than consumer. It's, we get used a lot, still mostly from a relationship building perspective. Like a big part of what we do is automating birthdays and anniversaries in the context of either clients or employees. So, we've lived through the times of the great resignation, and people are trying to maintain and retain their team and keep them feeling appreciated. And this is a great part. There's got a good role to play in that. And at the same time, it's so much, the old adage, it's so much easier to retain a customer than it is to gain a customer. So retaining your clients, showing your clients that you care, and using them as a referral tool to help get more clients is the smart thing to do. And this is, again, it's got a great play in that.
Yes. So tell me, when you created Cardly, what was your goal? What did you want to do with it?
It's funny, we've kind of shifted the goalposts a little bit on that. Not surprising. I mean, startups tend to pivot. I mean, we haven't pivoted too much away from the core concept and product, but I think originally we were very much about just seeing if it could work and trying to help change the way that greeting cards traditionally operated. So, to give that a bit of context. So traditionally, the old, drugstore type or card store model is that lots of cards are produced, they're shipped into the store. Hopefully they sell, but if they don't, they're pulled out and they get pulped, and the process rinses and repeats. So it's run by, in North America, two massive companies, American Greetings, Hallmark. They dominate. They sort of this industrial complex around greeting cards. And we're like, well, it's not great for a lot of reasons. One, it's not good for artists. So independent artists don't get paid very well if they just sell their artwork once and it could be used a bunch, or they might just work for the greeting card company and they're just rewarded, very not relative to their contribution. So if they create an amazing design that's really popular, they don't get extra benefit on the back of that. So we thought, well, okay, well, how do we make that bit better? So we paid really good commissions to artists to create beautiful designs and paid them every time the card was used. So we thought, okay, well, let's change that bit. The other was that, this quite wasteful model. A lot of the cards obviously produce offshore as well into China. So there's a lot of production, time, effort, energy, environmental impact that we could take out of the model by just going with a print on demand model. So only cards are produced when they're needed. And then the final thing was like, well, can we make it faster? So particularly for cross-border things, because we operate in multiple countries, and we've done that pretty much from day one, although we expanded into Canada more recently. But it's allowed people to be sending cross borders much more quickly than if they went to the post office and paid a whole bunch more for postage to get it across the country or across the world. And so those were the sort of initial things. It's like, well, let's just do it better. And that had come from where I'd been, which was like, ebooks, music streaming. It was just like disrupt the establishment. So that was the initial objective. But then it became a lot more focused around, okay, let's help people make more meaningful connections. People are doing things on their smartphone. They're doing things on the computer. How do we make that experience seamless as well, so that it's just do it where you are. Don't think about going into the store or whatever. So then we shifted more towards, making it a really great experience, and that became the focus. And then obviously business started to really use it. So there it's become more about how do we make it more scalable? So how do we make it automate it? How do you connect it to your various CRMs that you might use or other systems that you use? So it's about integrations, and we've built this really cool templating tool that allows you to make every message entirely contextual. And then more recently, it's like, okay, we've got this thing going, businesses like it, but they don't really know if it's working so much. So it's like, well, how do we let them know that it's working? And that's when we started looking at, and the pandemic helped a little bit with this, but QR codes finally had their moment.
Yeah.
So we started to use personalized QR codes so that if I sent 10 cards out to people, or 10 pieces of mail out to people, even though the QR code would link potentially to the same form or YouTube video or whatever we wanted to send that person to after a call to action, each of those QR codes is actually unique to each of those 10 people, so that we can then report back in the same way that an email click can, saying, hey, this was Kelly. He clicked on this at this time. He actually clicked it 3 times or scanned it 3 times. He's really warmed up. He's pretty keen on what it is you're talking about. So we could close the loop, and we could start to give them that analytics around a piece of physical mail and how people were interacting with it. And then we've also expanded it into gift cards that operate in a very similar fashion. It's also just sort of QR code driven, and that builds into the whole rewards and recognition. So turning it from being just a piece of outreach into something that actually shows, I appreciate you, not just enough to write something, but actually to give you something that might be valuable for you. So yeah, that's kind of broad brushstrokes been the journey, and the objective, of course, underlying that is to build a bigger, better, more scaled business over time that eventually, hopefully, has a decent payday and makes my family happy.
Well, I'm very confident you are going to accomplish that. I talked to you at the beginning of this show. I actually received one of your Cardly cards this Christmas from one of our sponsors, who is also a huge, huge advocate for you, and actually made this introduction possible. So I just want to give a shout out to Rodney Lover. Thank you so much. He's a sponsor. He's the CEO of At Work Office Furniture, and he's like, you got to meet Patrick, Kelly, because he's got something that's really, really impressive. And then he sent me a card. Yep. And when I received it, I was like, wow, I was actually blown away, Patrick, because the font that you guys have keyed, I'm sure that you created it. It's a full-on perfect handwrite. Yep. Like, you can barely tell. You can tell only because you can tell it's slightly printed. But aside from that, you can barely tell that it is not actually handwritten. How did you do that? That's very impressive.
Yes, I mean, it's been a bit of a journey for sure, but that was one of the most formative principles, right? So when we first sat down and went, well, how do we make it better than the traditional way of greeting cards? A bunch of people had already started doing sort of print on demand greeting cards, and we looked at what they did, and in most instances, they were very focused on the artwork piece. Like, I could put a picture of you on the front of a Time magazine or faux Time magazine thing and say, man of the year and what have you. So it was all about sort of making the card a bit quirky and funny. But the inside was just type, like it was just straight text. And it occurred to us, it's like, well, that's not how people do greeting cards now. And if they go into the shop, they buy a beautiful card, it's now static. I can't change the look and feel of that card so much in terms of what's on the front. But what I do is express myself inside the card, and I will handwrite, and I might even potentially, and we found in our research, about 1 in 3 people will do a little picture or a doodle, a little thing of balloons or something that, the picture of the dog or whatever it might be. And it could be bad. It was fine to be bad. That was part of the whole thing, that it's a little bit of expression from me. And we spoke to a lot of people about that, and it's like, well, the artwork is important because that's the initial expression. Then you open it up, and then it's all about, well, what do I think? And some people just write happy birthday, but most people will take a little bit of time and write a message. So we went like, well, that could be our thing. That could be how we differentiate. That could be how we make it different and more impactful than what's currently in the market. So we set about working out how to do that. And it was where we landed was an algorithmic approach that we've got patented. But basically we take samples of people's handwriting, convert that into several variants of fonts, mush it together in such a way, and have this algorithm do we call it humanization, and also emulate the way ink is applied. So both this ink effect and this humanization in combination, creating something that looks, as you say, virtually indistinguishable from the real thing. And but with all the benefits of it not being that. So, in North America, we've got some competitors that have got robots holding pens and stuff, which is definitely one approach. But they tend to just use like a very standardized font without too much variation. We've got a lot more variation on natural linkages of letters and so on that in the way that people write. But more to that, you can do the doodles, you can add signatures, you can add QR codes, you can add some more dynamic elements. We can have multiple people write in completely different pen colors, multiple signatures in different pen colors. Things that robots can't do, we can do very easily and at scale, and help make this piece of content even more impactful and, more importantly, measurable when in the business setting, measurable, and allow you to do some really clever things with things like QR codes, where you could literally link into if it was an e-com retailer, you can send out a birthday card, person scans the QR code, automatically applies a discount to their basket, so that they're just like, bang, here's your birthday special offer, scan the link, and you're halfway to transacting. So nobody else can kind of do that because of the approach they've taken of going, let's have something hold a pen. So we've continually improved upon that, continuing to improve upon it. But yeah, it's got pretty good. It's pretty impressive now.
It is the most authentic fake handwriting I've ever seen. Put it that way. It is almost indistinguishable. And I would say that, and the only reason that I say almost is because you can tell just slightly that it's printed. But man, if you could ever figure that one out, you're on there. There's no way anyone would ever be able to tell. And it doesn't matter, because you still read it just like it's real handwriting. Correct. It still feels authentic.
That's the thing. And it can be in someone's own handwriting. So it can be their own handwriting, their own signature. So it is as close to the real thing as possible. And let's be very clear here. If someone has got the time to do it, with their own pen to paper, absolutely do that. Like, it is an extremely useful and extremely powerful way of engaging with your clients, customers, team members. Like, you should do it if you can. But I think we all know that we don't have the time, and there's a risk we're going to forget, and there's a chance that we're not going to be able to leverage the benefit of doing it because we're just too time poor. And that's the problem we're really solving for, is that, if you can't do it, you should do it. And here's a way to do it. And it's so close that people are going to be perfectly fine with it. And that's the thing. People have come to us and gone, oh, I think it needs to be with a real pen, but actually now I've seen it, absolutely it doesn't, and I can do this at scale. So this is a better fit for me. The classic one, as we've just come through, obviously the holiday period, people are really time poor during that time of year. Everyone's in a mad rush to try and finish off the year, and not many people have got time to sit down and do it that way. So we can certainly take that burden from them. But then throughout the year, there's a couple of great use cases where I think it has a role to play that are quite obvious. One is that, if you are providing a service and your business is reliant on things like reviews, for example, one of the most fundamental ways of getting more reviews is to ask, right? Yes. But also the most fundamental reason why people don't get the review is they don't have time to ask. They don't ask, or they don't say, hey, could you give us a review? Why not automate that with something that's really powerful and actually pretty expressive to say thank you in the first place, and use automate a thank you card that goes out, have that QR code that they can just scan and write a review, like, with just super, super easy from their smartphone. And it works. Like, we see people doing that for Google reviews, and it's automatically triggered. So, they'll use Jobber, or if it's like a trade person or something, they'll complete a task. The task is completed in their CRM, card gets sent automatically, thank you card arrives, person writes a review. It's just a sweet, beautiful thing that just closes the loop. Customer's happy, business is very happy to get a positive review, and everything moves forward. But, that's just one of so many types of examples. But you can largely scale this thing, and I think one of our advisors sort of said it's like sentiment at scale, which is quite an interesting way of thinking about it, and it works. So
you've given like a few use cases, but I think, okay, so I'm sure that there was a time not so long ago that businesses understood how to use cards. They did. And
yeah, they
it's
did.
one of those skills that I think has, over the last decade or 2 decades, has really fallen off a cliff a little bit.
Yep.
And so what I'm hoping that we can maybe do is, do you mind just giving a few more examples about how organizations can use cards to handle business development tasks, to handle customer relationship? Just what are some more examples of how we can utilize cards to do business better?
Yeah, there are so many, but let me give you a couple of the highlights. Just before I do that, though, I think you are 100% correct. And obviously, the thing that changed was that people could reach people with email, and email became the predominant method for engagement. The problem with that is that it's also become so overused that getting cut through becomes really challenging. And I think when in that BD space, if you're relying on things like newsletters or e-newsletters or, business updates, these types of things to have cut through, they just don't. The open rates are heading in only one direction. Single sending, sure, if people have got a good relationship, they're probably still getting reasonable open rates, and that's fine. I mean, it's clearly an important communication tool. We're not advocating for replacing it, but when it's things like birthdays, anniversaries, important updates that you really want to make sure people get, I think there's a super important role for our product to play. So back to your question, examples. The two most common are for things like birthdays and anniversaries, just because they are fully automatable. So to put that into some context, it's possible to craft the perfect card message, choose a bunch of different birthday card designs, and fully automate the system to ingest a list of contacts and have them the cards arrive on or just before their birthday automatically, so that they go, hey, this person cares about me. They've shown that I'm worth spending. And this is the thing, because it does cost something. It's not email. Everyone believes email costs nothing, so therefore you care about me zero, right? Yeah. There is a correlation between the effort you've gone to and how you're received as how you're valued. So by sending something physical, we've gone to the effort of sending something physical. It's got a real stamp on it. Well, that's I know that costs something because stamps have got really expensive. So they know that you've gone and shown some care. So both in the context of birthdays and anniversaries, you can fully automate that, and that is something that's very popular. Outside of that, yes, it will be things like, we've got something coming up. This might be more appropriate for a letter, and it's like an invitation to an event or an invitation to a webinar, seminar, whatever it might be. It could even be a digital event. That's fine. But to get people, make them aware of it, to get them engaged on it, they're using physical mail as the invite or the opener to that conversation, and using the QR code, the personalized QR code, to link it back through and track the engagement on it. And it's very common for us to hear, well, when we did it via email, we got a certain amount of response rate. We actually got 3 times that because we used the physical outreach instead. So which is awesome. Then the other more common things are, holiday cards all the time. Like, that's hugely important. Reaching out to say thank you for the year that's just gone. Obviously we're in January, or this will probably go out in February, not so relevant to be thinking about now, but at the end of the year, hugely valuable. You should be showing your clients you care and thank them for the year. That's just almost the social contract we've got. So we make that very simple and super scalable. And then most of the rest will be things that are automated for purposes that are very specific to that business. So in the context of e-commerce, it might be they haven't transacted for a period of time. It might be they haven't transacted for 150 days, and the usual cadence of people shopping might be 80 days. So they've fallen outside of the usual. So they spend they trigger something to go out that puts possibly both a special offer and a call to action in the guise of a personal piece of correspondence and outreach to re-engage part of their database. Similarly, they might just do that because they've got some special deal going or what have you. Thank yous post-meeting, hugely important. Thank yous post-contract signing, or it's just got to that deal one stage in a CRM, automatically triggering the thank you. And the thank you can include a gift card and really deliver on some value there. So saying, thanks for signing this contract, here's $200 to spend it, blah. And we see that across a bunch of verticals. So in a real estate business, they might be sending them like a supermarket voucher because they've just moved to their new house. And they might time it so that it's when they arrive in the new house, instead of sending them a gift basket of food that they may or may not like. They're sending them a voucher that they can use how they want. And the way we do gift vouchers is very flexible too. So they can say, yep, spend it at a particular retailer or swap it for something else. So that family or that purchaser could say, sure, yeah, I'll spend it at the supermarket, or actually, no, I just need a bunch of odds and ends from Amazon, so I'm going to swap it for that, or whatever it might be. So that gives them. I think people really appreciate that too. It's like it's a gift without strings attached because they've got the flexibility of swapping it for what makes sense for them. So yeah, thank yous, automating the thank you process at the right point. The review request, which I just spoke to, very, very common as well. Again, fully automated based on what's happening in a CRM. And then just ad hoc things that you might pick up in sales. So, we've just had a conversation. Let's say you drop some tidbit about an important date that's coming up for you, or it's just happened and I just want to send you a congratulations. So I know that you're about to tick over your first year with the podcast. That would be a great reason for me to send you just a congratulations card on how awesomely you've done over the past year. And why not, right? Like if we've built that rapport and importantly, I need your mailing address, but if I had that, boom, that would be a great reason to do it. And I'm sure if that turned up in the post, you're going to go, wow, like you've cared enough to do that. We've just taken our relationship to another level. Totally. And that's the thing. And that's a bunch of ideas, but literally people come to us every day with something new. I'm like, yeah, okay, that could work. That would totally work. So yeah, it's really, I think it's what's appropriate to the organization. It's what's appropriate to your, the product you're selling. The size of the purchase is actually a huge driver for this. We find that people who have higher value in their sales are more likely to use us. So real estate, hugely popular. Automotive, also, pretty big purchase. Professional services, where people are spending, tens of thousands of dollars with a professional service provider over the course of each year. They absolutely know that they should be doing these things because these customers are high value. These customers are spending a lot of money, and they should be shown that you care about them, and not feel too transactional. I think it's different if you're selling stuff that's not, it is more transactional, possibly not a fit. But that said, e-commerce is super transactional, and we still see it being used in those sort of verticals as well. So
it's multifaceted. There's tons of applications, and I think like the most important takeaway here, people, is cards are not dead.
No. Well, as I said, like there's plenty of articles out there saying that physical mail is more impactful than ever because it is becoming rare. I think the statistic now is that the average household in the USA receives fewer than 2 or 3 pieces of handwritten mail a year. Mm-hmm. So let's think about that from a BD perspective. If you're able to leverage that, I mean, those 3 pieces are getting read. Yours is going to get read as well. So that's what makes it so powerful. So it's playing to our strengths. And I think if you can just bring the right mindset and smarts to it and execute well, it's extremely effective.
Yeah. And I also want to touch on the fact that your website is absolutely beautiful. You've done a really, really great job laying it out and making it easy to use. I think that being the other side of this is that, like, yes, not only is this platform really effective, it's actually easy to get this done. They've laid it out really well. Like, congratulations. It's very well done. It's
Thank you.
beautiful. It's engaging. It leads you down the correct paths to where you need to go. And yeah, I hope that we send an absolute ton of people your way, Patrick, because I think what
Yep.
you're doing, even though it's not new technology, the way that you're
No.
doing it is new technology.
Yep.
And it's using it in a more effective way than it's ever been used before. You have really reinvented cards, but reinvented them in the best way possible. And frankly, it's going to leave an impact. I think you're going to give Hallmark a run for their money.
He's hoping. I mean, that was the original thing, right? Was to disrupt those. Those guys have been at it for a long, long time and haven't evolved a whole bunch. So yeah, that was the original thing. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing that experience. A lot of time and effort has gone into creating a really intuitive UI. That said, from the business side as well, we've got some pretty good plaudits around our service and support. So when people have come to us with their particular challenges and what they're trying to achieve, we're there to guide them through that process as well. So
you also have a great environmental policy. And it wouldn't be fair not to talk about that. Can you just talk about your environmental policy and the things you guys are doing?
Yeah. So thanks for raising that, because it is something that I kind of alluded to before. But there's a lot of waste in what happens traditionally in this space. Generally, paper products are great. We think about recycling and what can and can't be. Like, paper is 100% recyclable. Certainly the way we do it, there's no embellishment in our process. We're not putting plastic. There's no plastic in the process at all. So it's a very sustainable product that we're putting out there. I know people think, oh, well, postage and but of the waste that we have in the world that we can't avoid, this is actually not really bad waste. This is fully recyclable, and all of what we do is with sustainable materials. So everything we're sourcing is FSC, Forest Council. Can't remember the last C, what it stands for, but so certified as being sustainably sourced from proper, correct forestry methods. We do use some recycled materials as well, and as I said, there's no plastic introduced into the process. And in the consumer side of things, we went, well, hold up. Of course, there are trees still being cut down to and that has a carbon impact. So how do we offset that? Well, we've tried to do that in a pretty aggressive way. So we basically, for every tree that is used in the production of our cards, we're planting 50, possibly closer to 100 trees in place of that. So we're trying to have an outsized positive impact on what we're doing, and we've planted tens of thousands of trees at this point. That's just, so for every 100 cards get sent out, we plant 5 trees, I think it is. I'm trying to remember, but I'm pretty sure it's 5 trees. You might have it in front of you, Kelly. So so we're trying to have a really positive impact on that side of things. I've got a young family, and the world is pretty challenged from an environmental perspective. So if there's some things that any organisation can do to contribute positively, they should. And for us, given that there's always been that concern about paper, and I don't really know why we're so concerned about paper's not the problem. It's definitely not the problem. Plastic is the problem from a pollution perspective. So we're trying to do the right thing there.
Yeah. And you know what? Frankly, you are making a difference. The reality is there's a lot of companies that do a hell of a lot less. So I think you're very much on point either way. And it's a great policy. And either way, as long as you are making an effort, which you are, a big one, I think it shows a lot. It shows a lot about your character and your values and what's important to you. And I think more and more that is becoming something that is important to the world. And so, yeah, congratulations. It's the right move.
Well, as I said, it came from just trying to do it better. That was the guiding principle. Like, how do we make it better and not having waste as well? The other thing is, I mentioned the advantage of shipping locally. So even if you just think between the USA and Canada, I don't think we really have any direct competitors so much in Canada. So we're the only people that post locally in Canada, which means that there's less carbon impact for what we're doing in Canada versus people who are mostly shipping from the US. That stuff's being trucked across many miles to even just get across the border. So wherever we can, we try and do it better. And I think eventually we'll end up having operations both on the East Coast and the West Coast of Canada for the same reason. Big country, if we're only shipping from the East Coast, which we do at present, there's more environmental impact we can remove from that process. We will.
Amazing. Well, Patrick, I have to ask you, because you have literally been an entrepreneur your entire life, whether you liked it or not. We have a lot of new business owners listening, a lot of founders, a lot of startups, a lot of CEOs and executives, and a lot of people who are future CEOs and executives who are standing on the sidelines. Maybe they got a great idea and they want to jump, but they need that little kick in the butt. What's the best piece of entrepreneurial advice that you think you could give them?
Oh, that's always so hard to come up with one piece of advice in these things. I think the one thing I would say, especially if you're a little bit risk averse, is think about how you can de-risk the step-off point. So, if it could be leaving your cushy current role and really stepping into something that's outside of your comfort zone. I think if you can think of creative ways of testing it and validating your ideas, you should absolutely do that. Like, I've seen quite a few entrepreneurs, their first foray, they've had a great vision, but in executing it, they've really probably overcommitted themselves and over risked, or put in too much risk into validating their idea. And I don't like that for two reasons. One, okay, it could be quite wasteful. They could end up burning a lot of money and find out that it's not a very good idea. But the other is that I think it probably ruins them for the rest of their life in terms of taking risks and being entrepreneurial. And that's not good, because more entrepreneurs in the world is not a bad thing. I think if you've got good ideas, the world will largely be a better place if good ideas are seeing the light of day. So, and I guess it's not great, clear advice, but where you can, look at it critically, really challenge your ideas before you put them into the world. Don't be afraid to have multiple ideas, before you really put your chips in on anything. But even when you start doing that, try and validate it. Talk to lots of people. Ask for lots of opinions. Go to people that you might know are not going to be, because when we ask people things, often people are too polite, right, to tell you what they really think. So go and ask the hard questions and say, no, really. Like, don't just go, yeah, cool, everyone said it was a great idea and then it didn't work. And like, why didn't anyone tell me that they really thought it was a terrible idea? So almost have an amount of skepticism yourself. And it's hard because you're so enthusiastic, right? I want this thing to be a thing, and I reckon it can work. It should work. And but seek out people who are going to tell you some hard truths and really challenge you. If you can't challenge yourself, get some people who can really challenge you and ask you the tough questions, so that you're giving yourself the best chance of success from the very start. Because lots of people have been there and done that, and they've probably got some great advice. So if, I think Sam Walton always said it best, but there's probably no new ideas. You're always standing on the shoulders of others that have been there. So both sides of that, think about your idea in the context of, is it different enough? Is it got enough variability in it it's different enough from the original ideas that you're building upon that it's got a chance of working, but also go and talk to other people and validate that, the ideas make sense to more than just yourself.
Yes. So that's it, people. Validate your ideas. Patrick, this has been an absolutely amazing episode. Thank you so much for getting up in the wee hours of the morning in Australia to have this conversation with us.
Super welcome, Kelly.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been great. I'm not a big fan of talking about myself, but hopefully some people get some value out of it. And if anyone has any questions or is interested in the product in any way, feel free to reach out. We're always here to support people.
Absolutely. And what is the best way for them to reach out to you? Obviously, they can go to cardly.net to check out the website and pick cards and order them. But if somebody wanted to reach out to your team, Patrick, what's the best way for them to email you?
Yeah, we've got a pretty active support channel there. So just support@cardly.net if you want to go directly via our email. But the website's not a bad starting point. You'll find lots of information about, the business use cases, some that I've probably forgotten to even mention. But yeah, having a look through the business portal is a good starting point. And it costs nothing to get a sample. It costs nothing to create an account and have a bit of a look around. So I encourage people to just have a play and see what they think of the product, and if they like it, our team will guide them on that journey.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll be the first to say your cards are amazing.
Thank you.
There's no question that if you're listening to this and you order cards for your business or for your clients, just go to Cardly. They are awesome. Patrick is awesome. You can tell he's a very humble person, and honestly, great place to do business. So feel free, go check out Cardly. Patrick, it's been amazing. Until next time, this has been episode 114 of the Business Development Podcast, and we will catch you on the flip side.
This has been the Business Development Podcast with Kelly Kennedy. Kelly has 15 years in sales and business development experience within the Alberta oil and gas industry and founded his own business development firm in 2020. His passion and his specialization is in customer relationship generation and business development. The show is brought to you by Capital Business Development, your business development specialists. For more, we invite you to the website at www.capitalbd.ca. See you next time on the Business Development Podcast.
Business Rockstars. We at the Business Development Podcast humbly invite you to be part of our journey. Despite our global reach spanning over 130 countries and our status as an award-winning show, we remain committed to delivering valuable insights and engaging content to our audience of decision makers. With 2 episodes released every single week and a back catalog of over 100 episodes, we strive to provide our listeners with the latest strategies and trends in business development and business growth. Why consider sponsoring us? Our listeners trust us to deliver authentic, informative content, making it an ideal platform for you to showcase your brand in a genuine and meaningful way. Choose from flexible sponsorship packages tailored to fit your advertising needs. With a back catalog of over 100 episodes and an average of 8 new episodes released every single month, there are plenty of opportunities for you to connect with our audience. If you believe that your brand aligns with our humble mission, reach out to us at podcast@capitalbd.ca. Let's start a conversation and explore how we can collaborate to elevate your brand together. Thank you for considering us. Send us an email at podcast@capitalbd.ca and let's partner for the future.